Hi guys, so this is a little introduction to EQ. EQ in general, not just Logic 10's EQ, but because we use Logic 10 for recording and mixing at college, this is what I'll be demonstrating. But this applies to any software that you might be using at home or for any other projects like Reason, Ableton, Pro Tools, all exactly the same. So let's just recap what the EQ looks like and what the controls on it do. So I've selected my kick drum track here, and I'm just going to solo that because I just want to hear this at the moment. And in the inspector menu on the left hand side of each track, you've got all these controls here. So I've got the volume, pan, etc., and I can access whether I want to see that or not with this inspector control here. So your EQ section will always be here, so double click here to open it, and this is Logic's EQ. So let's just go over some of the parameters or the features of the EQ. Really nice thing about Logic's EQ is this analyzer control. So with this off, you won't see the signal coming in like so. Turn it on, and now we can see the signal coming in, which is really handy when you're mixing. It gives you a visual aid as well. So let's go over what these do, why they're all different shapes, and what these controls here do. Okay, so up here, these are your filters, and these will EQ, or they will filter the sound in a different way. They behave differently. So the first one you see is what we call the high pass filter. Okay, so it does what it says. It only allows high frequencies through. So as I move this up, it is removing low frequency information from the signal, and if I play the kick drum track back and move this frequency control over to the right into the high frequency regions, you should hear less bass information in the signal. Like so. Okay, so this is really handy for cleaning up signals where we don't want bass information in the signal. In our case, in a kick drum, we want bass information, so we're not going to use that one. Second control here, you've got, looks the same as this one. This is called a shelving filter, and it's called a shelving filter because if you increase the gain, i.e. boost, or cut, decrease the gain, it responds in a sort of shape that resembles a shelf, like a shelf-like shape, if you like. So this is really good for getting a wide boost or cut across a frequency range. The next one, so this is the low shelf, I should say. This is the high shelf. Does exactly the same sort of response curve, but in the high frequency regions, and you can change what frequency that starts at, but we'll come on to that in a second. So low shelf, high shelf filter. Next one, you've got 4 of these, and they're all different colours, and we'll come on to that in a second. But these are called bell filters, and they, again, like the shelving filter, respond in a shape which resembles a bell. So if I increase the gain or boost, you get a bell-shaped response like that, and exactly the same there. And these operate exactly the same sort of shape. Okay, now you might be wondering why that one looks a lot bigger and that one looks a lot thinner, and we'll come on to that now. Okay, so another thing you can do is deactivate the filters by clicking on them, or activate them again depending on which ones you want to use. Okay, so I'll deactivate that for now. Last one I should mention is the low pass filter, which is the polar opposite of the high pass filter and does exactly what you'd expect. So let's listen to the effect of that. And you've probably heard that kind of thing in dance music quite a lot. Very popular effect by DJs, electronic producers, that sort of thing. But very useful for mixing generally as well, where we want to clean out the high frequency information in a bassy signal. So great. So filters, high pass filter, low shelf, bell filters. high shelf filter, and low pass filter. Okay, so let's look at these controls here. The first one we've got here, and let's use the bell filter as an example, is your frequency control. Okay, so in the frequency spectrum, 20 is about the lowest frequency we can hear. We can't actually really hear it, we more feel it, but in the human hearing range, that's the lowest we can go. 20 kilohertz, right at the top in the high frequency spectrum, is about the highest we can hear. So that's why the range is set from 20 to 20k, not 0 to 100 or 1000 or something. It's just the way it's worked out. So with this frequency control and with this bell filter selected, I can now select what frequency, higher or lower, I want to affect. And I can also do the same and in this fashion by decreasing the volume of that frequency. So that leads us on to the second control, which is your gain. So if you increase the gain, you're going to increase the volume of that frequency. If you decrease the gain, you're going to decrease the volume of that frequency. Very simple. The third and final one, very important, which often gets overlooked, is the bandwidth, or the Q. And that's why when I activated this bell filter, that looked a lot thinner than when I activated that one. It's because they have different bandwidths. You can see here that's 0.6 and this one here is 0.2. Okay, the numbers work the other way round, so a higher bandwidth, a thinner response, will have a higher value, and a lower one will make the area response of the bandwidth a lot larger. Okay, so don't get confused there. So this is important to shape the response of the EQ. So I want that frequency and I want to increase it by, say, 9 decibels, but I want it to affect a very, very narrow range of frequencies. So 144 hertz and nothing much after it. If I move that over to 100, bang on 100 on this white line, it might become a lot simpler to understand. So 100 hertz, increasing the gain of that frequency by 9 decibels and by a very narrow bandwidth, i.e. it's not going to affect anything to the left or to the right of the frequency range past 100. If I do the opposite and now make this bandwidth very low, it's going to affect a very wide area at a decreasing amount of gain after to the left and the right of 100. Okay, so this can be nice to shape the response. So let's just play the kick drum back and see if we can hear that difference. And you can do exactly the same with high frequencies. So let's move up to 2050 hertz. You can hear this awful like ringing sound. Okay, so you can shape the response with the resonance, which is a really useful thing to do. So there's your frequency, there's your volume, your gain amount, and that is your bandwidth. Okay, so really simple. And I should mention that you can scan the frequency just by holding this point here on your filter and move it left and right, up and down, to either increase or decrease the volume of that frequency. And bandwidth, you need to actually click on the last parameter here. Okay, there's a few other things you can do here. Obviously there are loads of presets here which can be useful as a starting point, but it's much better if you understand this and what's coming into it rather than just relying on a preset, because they're not always fantastic. This is the overall volume of that EQ. You can see it's decreasing the overall volume of the EQ, and it will sound like this. Okay, and I see a lot of YouTube videos where people are demonstrating EQ and they whack it right up in order to get some volume, and they end up with all their tracks peaking and stuff, and that's why I decided to make my own for you guys, because that's can be a useful tool, but usually we leave it at 0. Okay, so that's about it for an introduction to EQ. So Analyzer, turn it on, lights go on the left hand side here, and you can see the signal coming in. Here are your filters here, so high pass filter, low shelf filter, 4 bell filters, high shelf filter and low pass filter. Okay, and we'll come on to the next series of videos EQing individual tracks and what to look out for. Okay, thanks very much.